The ice drill cut through another layer of frozen ground on the planet, Kepler 442c. Dr. Lisa Morgan wiped sweat from her face and checked the readings on her scanner. 3 kilometers down into the ice, and still nothing but more ice and rock. The planet had been frozen for thousands of years, but something about the mineral readings kept drawing her team back to this spot. "We should give up and try the southern region," said her assistant, Dr. Kevin Brooks. He kicked at a chunk of ice with his boot. "There's nothing here but more frozen dirt." Lisa shook her head. "The scans show something metal down there, something big. We keep drilling." The year was 2387, and humans had been exploring space for over 150 years. They had found dozens of planets and built colonies on many of them, but they were still new compared to the other races in the galaxy. The Zephyrians had been flying between stars for over 1,000 years. The Cortani had technology that seemed like magic to most humans. The Vexon were so advanced in warfare that they could destroy entire planets if they wanted to. Humans were allowed to exist in the galaxy, but just barely. They had to follow rules made by the older races. They could not build certain types of weapons. They could not expand too fast. They had to ask permission for almost everything. Most humans accepted this as the way things had to be. The drill hit something solid. Not rock this time, but metal. Lisa felt her heart race as she checked. The scanner again. The readings showed a large metal object buried in the ice. It was shaped like a cylinder, about the size of a small room. "Get the thermal cutters," Lisa ordered. "We're going to melt our way down to that thing." It took 6 hours to reach the metal object. When they finally cleared away the last of the ice, Lisa could not believe what she was seeing. It was some kind of chamber made from metal she did not recognize. The surface was covered in strange symbols that looked almost human, but older than anything she had ever seen. "Take pictures of everything," she told Kevin. "Every symbol, every scratch, every detail." The chamber had a window made of thick, clear material. Lisa wiped away the frost and looked inside. What she saw made her step backward in shock. There was a person inside, a human male, lying still as if he was sleeping. His skin was pale, but he looked perfectly preserved. "This is impossible," Kevin whispered, looking over her shoulder. "How long has this been buried here?" Lisa ran a carbon dating scan on the chamber. The results made no sense. According to her equipment, the chamber was over 400 years old. That would put it back in the early 21st century, long before humans had ever left Earth, long before they had learned how to travel between stars. "Call the colonial government," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "We need to report this immediately." Within 12 hours, ships began arriving from across human space. Scientists, military officers, and government officials all wanted to see the impossible discovery. The news spread quickly beyond human territory. Soon, representatives from the Galactic Council were demanding to inspect the find. Ambassador Zethka of the Zephyrian Empire arrived first. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that shimmered in the light. His voice sounded like wind through metal when he spoke. "This discovery is most unusual," he said, studying the chamber. "Humans claim they only achieved spaceflight 150 years ago. Yet here is evidence of much older technology." Commander Vax of the Cortani Federation came next. The Cortani looked like large insects, but they were the smartest race in the galaxy. Vax clicked his mandibles as he examined the symbols on the chamber. "The mathematical principles shown here are quite advanced," he said through his translator. "Device, perhaps more advanced than current human knowledge." General Locke of the Vexon Collective was the last to arrive. The Vexon were warriors, bred for battle. Mock stood over 2 meters tall, with thick armor-like skin and 4 arms. He looked at the chamber with suspicion. If humans had this technology 400 years ago, why did they pretend to be so primitive when they joined the galaxy? He growled. This could be a deception. Dr. Lisa Morgan found herself in the middle of a political storm. The alien races were angry and suspicious. They demanded answers she did not have. The human government was nervous about upsetting their alien neighbors. Everyone wanted to know if it was safe to open the chamber. "We should destroy it," said President Nathan Cross during a video conference. "This discovery is causing too many problems with the other races. We cannot destroy it without studying it first," Lisa argued. "This could be the greatest archaeological find in human history. Or it could be our last find if the aliens decide we are a threat," the president replied. But Lisa had already made her decision. She had spent 3 days studying the chamber with her team. They had found what looked like control panels and status displays. The symbols were starting to make sense to her. Some of them looked like early human writing, but changed over time. The fourth night, when most of the politicians and aliens had returned to their ships, Lisa and her team prepared to open the chamber. Kevin tried to talk her out of it. "If this goes wrong, we could all end up in alien prison," he said, "or worse." "If we do nothing, they will take the chamber away from us," Lisa replied. "This is our discovery, our ancestor. We have the right to learn from him." She activated the controls they had figured out. The chamber began to make soft humming sounds. Lights came on inside. Slowly, very slowly, the temperature began to rise. Ice crystals that had formed on the glass started to melt. The man inside began to stir. His fingers moved first, then his eyes opened. He looked around, confused and scared. Then he saw Lisa looking down at him through the glass. His eyes met hers, and she saw intelligence there. Old intelligence and something else. Something that made her step back from the chamber. The man was awake. The chamber opened with a soft hiss. Warm air rushed out, carrying a smell like old metal and something else she could not identify. The man sat up slowly, looking at Lisa and her team. He was older than he had looked while sleeping, maybe 40 years old. His hair was brown with gray streaks. His face was hard, marked with old scars. When he spoke, his voice was rough from long sleep. "Where am I?" "You are on a planet called Kepler 442c, Lisa said carefully. "My name is Dr. Lisa Morgan. You have been sleeping for a very long time." The man looked around at the equipment, the walls of ice, the strange clothes they were wearing. "How long?" "Over 400 years. The man was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed, but it was not a happy sound. 400 years. And humans made it to the stars after all. He looked at Lisa again. "I am Jake Sullivan. I was a soldier back on Earth. Earth still exists," Lisa said. "But it is just one planet now. Humans live on many worlds." "And the aliens?" Jake asked. "Have you met the aliens yet?" Lisa was surprised. "Yes. How did you know there would be aliens?" Jake smiled, and this time it was not friendly. "Because space is big, and life finds a way. What I want to know is, who is in charge out here?" "The Galactic Council makes most of the rules," Lisa said. "The older races guide the younger ones." "And where do humans fit in this order?" Lisa looked uncomfortable. "We follow the rules. We try not to cause trouble." Jake stood up from the chamber. He was tall and moved like a predator, despite having been frozen for centuries. "That sounds like we are at the bottom." "It is safer that way," Lisa said quickly. "The other races are very powerful. They could destroy us if they wanted to." Jake looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked to the wall of ice and stared up at the surface, where alien ships waited in orbit. "Dr. Morgan," he said quietly, "I think you and I need to have a very long talk. about what humans used to be like. Jake Sullivan spent 3 days learning about the new world. Dr. Lisa Morgan showed him pictures of human colonies spread across dozens of planets. She explained how faster-than-light travel worked and how humans had joined the galactic community. Jake listened to everything, but his face grew darker with each new piece of information. "You said humans follow alien rules," Jake said on the 3rd day. "What happens if humans break these rules?" Lisa looked nervous. "The Galactic Council can cut off trade. They can blockade our planets. In extreme cases, they can authorize military action." "Military action," Jake repeated. "You mean they can attack human worlds?" "It has never happened," Lisa said quickly. "Humans are careful to follow all the rules." Jake stood at the window of the research station. Outside, he could see 3 alien ships in orbit around the planet. They had been there since word of his discovery spread. "Those ships up there, are they here to protect us or watch us?" "Both, I think," Lisa admitted. "That sounds like a prison to me." Lisa wanted to argue, but she could not find the words. She had grown up in this galaxy where humans always asked permission and never challenged the older races. It was just the way things were. But Jake came from a different time, and he saw things differently. On the 4th day, Captain Roy Bennett arrived with his ship, the UCS Horizon. Bennett was a career military officer, proud of his service record. He had been ordered to transport Jake to New Terra, the capital of human space, where government officials would decide what to do with him. "Mr. Sullivan," Bennett said when they met, "I am here to escort you to New Terra for debriefing." Jake looked at the captain's uniform, noting the neat creases and shiny buttons. "You are military?" "Yes, sir. I command the exploration vessel Horizon." "How many battles have you fought, Captain?" Bennett straightened. "The human fleet maintains peace through diplomacy, sir. We have not engaged in major combat operations in over 50 years. Jake nodded slowly. 50 years of peace. That explains a lot. As they prepared to leave Kepler 442c, Jake asked Lisa to come with them. "You found me, Doctor. I think you should see what happens next." Lisa agreed, though she was not sure why. Something about Jake made her want to understand more about humanity's past. Maybe it was the way he moved, like he was always ready for danger. Maybe it was the way he looked at the alien ships, not with fear or respect, but like he was studying them for weaknesses. The UCS Horizon was a modern human ship built for exploration and diplomacy. It had comfortable quarters, advanced sensors, and a small defensive weapon system that barely qualified as military grade. Captain Bennett was proud of his ship and crew. Jake toured the vessel with Bennett, asking questions about engines, weapons, and crew training. The captain answered proudly, explaining how human technology had advanced since joining the galactic community. "Your weapons," Jake said, looking at the ship's gun systems. "They are designed not to hurt anyone too badly." "They are designed for defense," Bennett corrected. "Human ships are not warships. We follow galactic conventions for civilian vessels." "And if someone attacks you with real warships?" Bennett looked uncomfortable. "We would call for help from the Galactic Council." Jake said nothing, but Lisa saw him shake his head slightly. 2 days into their journey to New Terra, the ship's alarms began screaming. Bennett rushed to the bridge with Jake and Lisa following. The main screen showed 3 ships approaching. Fast, they were Vexon vessels, built like metal sharks with weapon pods covering their hulls. "This is Captain Bennett of the UCS Horizon," Bennett broadcast. "Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The reply came in the harsh voice of a Vexon commander. "This is War Leader Grok. You carry dangerous cargo. Surrender the ancient human for inspection." Bennett looked pale. "I cannot do that. The passenger is under human government protection." Then you will be destroyed, Grok replied simply. The 3 Vexon ships spread out to attack positions. Each. One was twice the size of the Horizon and carried enough weapons to blow the human ship apart in seconds. Bennett's crew looked to him for orders, but he had no good options. Send a distress signal, Bennett ordered. Tell them we need immediate assistance. The nearest human patrol is 6 hours away, reported his communications officer. We do not have 6 hours, Bennett said. Jake stepped forward. Captain, with your permission, I would like to take command. Bennett stared at him. You have been asleep for 400 years. You know nothing about modern space combat. I know about combat, Jake said calmly, and those Vexon ships are making a mistake. What mistake? Bennett asked. They think you will fight like a civilized person. Jake moved to the weapons console and began studying the controls. The weapons officer, Lieutenant Carl Davis, tried to explain how the systems worked, but Jake was already figuring them out. His hands moved over the controls like he had been using them all his life. The Vexon are attacking in standard formation. Jake said, 3 ships in a triangle, coming at us from different angles. It is a good formation for fighting other civilized races who will try to retreat or call for help. So what do we do? Bennett asked. Jake smiled, and for the first time, Lisa saw something dangerous in his expression. We do something uncivilized. Full power to engines. Ram the lead ship. Ram them? Bennett looked shocked. That will destroy us too. Not if we do it right. Trust me, Captain. Bennett hesitated for only a moment. Then he gave the order. All hands, prepare for ramming speed. Engineering, give me everything you have. The Horizon accelerated directly toward the lead Vexon ship. Grok's voice came over the radio, confused and angry. Human ship, change course immediately. You will be destroyed. Then we all die together. Jake replied into the microphone. The Vexon ships hesitated. This was not how space battles were supposed to work. Ships were supposed to maneuver and fire at long range, following the established rules of galactic warfare. They were not supposed to try to ram each other like ancient sailing ships. At the last second, Jake activated the ship's emergency thrusters, causing the Horizon to veer sharply to the side. The human ship scraped along the hull of the Vexon vessel, its shields sparking against their armor. But Jake had calculated the angle perfectly. The Horizon's shields overloaded the Vexon ship's defensive systems, and Jake fired every weapon. The human ship had directly into the alien vessel's engine compartment. The Vexon ship exploded. The other 2 Vexon vessels immediately changed formation, no longer certain about their easy victory. Jake was all ready, planning his next move. Come about, he ordered. Target the ship on our left. Full power to forward shields. Sir, Lieutenant Davis said, we cannot survive another ramming attack. We are not ramming this time, Jake said. We are going to do something even more uncivilized. Jake flew the Horizon straight at the second Vexon ship, but instead of ramming, he flew under it and fired all weapons at its belly, where the armor was thinnest. The alien ship tried to turn to bring its main guns to bear, but Jake was already moving away, using the Horizon's smaller size to stay in the bigger ship's blind spots. Impossible, Captain Bennett whispered. How did you know their weak points? All ships have weak points, Jake said. You just have to be willing to look for them. The third Vexon ship retreated after seeing 2 of its companions destroyed by a single human exploration vessel. War Leader Grok's voice came over the radio one last time, filled with confusion and anger. This is not how humans fight, he said. Jake keyed the microphone. You have been fighting the wrong humans. After the battle, Captain Bennett stared at Jake with a mixture of awe and fear. Where did you learn to fight like that? Earth, Jake said simply. Before we learned to be civilized. Lisa realized that she was looking at something the galaxy had never seen before. Not a human who followed rules and asked permission, but a human who fought to win. A human who did whatever it took to survive. And Jake Sullivan was just getting started. News of the battle spread across human space faster than Jake's ship could travel. 3 Vexon warships destroyed by a single human exploration vessel was impossible, but the sensor recordings proved it had happened. By the time the UCS Horizon reached New Terra, crowds had gathered at the spaceport. Some came to cheer, others came to stare, and many came because they were afraid. President Nathan Cross met Jake at the landing platform, surrounded by security, guards, and government officials. The president was a careful man who had spent his career avoiding conflict with the alien races. The last thing he wanted was a war. "Mr. Sullivan," President Cross said, shaking Jake's hand, "welcome to New Terra. I hope we can discuss your situation privately." "My situation?" Jake asked. "I think you mean humanity's situation." The president led Jake to a secure conference room in the Capitol building. Dr. Lisa Morgan came along, still fascinated by what she had discovered. Captain Bennett also attended, still trying to understand what had happened on his ship. "The Galactic Council is very upset about the Vexon ships," President Cross began. "They say you used illegal combat tactics." Jake laughed. "Illegal? Since? When is it illegal to defend yourself?" "Since we signed the Galactic Peace Accords," the president replied. "Human ships are not supposed to be capable of destroying alien warships. It threatens the balance of power." "Good," Jake said simply. "The balance of power is wrong." President Cross looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Sullivan, you have been asleep for 400 years. You do not understand how things work now. Humans are safe because we follow the rules. If we start fighting the alien races, they could destroy every human colony in the galaxy." "Could they?" Jake asked. "Are you sure about that? They have better technology, bigger ships, more experience with warfare." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the city of New Terra stretching to the horizon. Millions of humans lived and worked there, building families and making lives for themselves. But they did it all under alien rules. "Captain Bennett," Jake said, "how many human ships are there in the fleet?" "About 3,000 vessels," Bennett replied. "Most are exploration or transport ships, but we have some military vessels." "And how many people live in human space?" "Roughly 50 billion across all our colonies." Jake nodded. 50 billion humans. That is a lot of people. "How many alien races are there in the Galactic Council?" 12 major races, President Cross answered, plus dozens of smaller ones. "And their total population?" The president looked uncomfortable. "We estimate around 200 billion across all alien species." "So they outnumber us 4 to 1, Jake said. "Those are not impossible odds." "You are talking about war," President Cross said. "Billions of people would die." "Billions of people are already dying," Jake replied. "They are just dying slowly, over generations, as humanity becomes weaker and more dependent." Before the president could respond, alarms began ringing throughout the building. A guard rushed into the conference room with an urgent message. "Sir, the Galactic Council has issued an ultimatum. They demand that Jake Sullivan be turned over to them within 24 hours for evaluation and containment. If we refuse, they will begin economic sanctions against all human colonies." Jake smiled. Evaluation and containment. That sounds like a fancy way of saying prison. "It might not be that bad," President Cross said weakly. "Mr. President," Jake said, "with respect, you are a fool if you believe that." That night, Jake disappeared from the government building. Security cameras showed him walking out the front door, but no one tried to stop him. By morning, he was gone. 3 days later, Jake surfaced in the underground tunnels beneath New Terra's industrial district. He had found the places where humans gathered when they wanted to speak freely, away from alien surveillance. These were the bars and meeting halls where veteran spacers and former military personnel shared stories and complaints about the way things were. Jake's first recruit was Colonel Amy Price, a retired officer who had spent 20 years watching human forces become weaker and more restricted. She found Jake in a bar called Murphy's, surrounded by a dozen men and women who hung on his every word. "You served in the border conflicts 15 years ago," Jake said when Amy introduced herself. "You fought the Cortani pirates and won every engagement." "How did you know that?" Amy asked. "Because you move like a soldier, and you have scars on your hands from plasma burns. Also, because you are here listening to me instead of running to turn me in." Amy sat down at Jake's table. "What do you want?" "I want to teach humans how to fight again," Jake said. "Not the civilized fighting they taught you in the academy. Real fighting, the kind that wins wars." Over the next week, Jake began training Amy and her friends in what he called old Earth tactics. They met in abandoned warehouses and empty construction sites, learning techniques that were not in any modern military manual. Jake taught them how to build bombs from common industrial chemicals. He showed them how to disable alien technology using electromagnetic pulses. He explained how to turn civilian ships into weapons and how to fight in cities without destroying everything around them. "The aliens think they know how humans fight," Jake told his students. "They have studied our modern tactics for 150 years. But they have never seen what humans were like before we learned to be nice." Word of Jake's training spread through the underground networks. Former soldiers, frustrated, police officers, and angry colonists began seeking him out. Jake was careful about who he accepted. He wanted people who understood that war was not a game with rules. Sergeant Pete Rodriguez was a former Marine who had been discharged for being too aggressive. He found Jake's group through Amy Price and immediately understood what Jake was trying to do. "The brass always told us to use minimum force," Pete said during one training session. "They said we had to worry about public relations and alien opinions." "Public relations do not win wars," Jake replied. "Fear wins wars. Respect wins wars. The willingness to do whatever it takes wins wars." Carla Hughes was different from the others. She had worked in intelligence, gathering information about alien activities in human space. She brought Jake something more valuable than muscle or weapons knowledge. She brought him information. "The aliens are scared," she told Jake during a private meeting. "My contacts in the intelligence services say the Galactic Council is arguing about what to do with you. Some want to capture you quietly. Others want to make an example of you." "What kind of example?" Jake asked. "A kind that involves destroying a human colony or two to show what happens when humans get out of line." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Which colonies are they considering?" "Haven is at the top of the list. It is a mining colony with about 200,000 people, far enough from the major population centers that it would not cause too much unrest, but big enough to send a message." That night, Jake called together all of his recruits. There were nearly 50 of them now, trained in sabotage, guerrilla warfare, and psychological operations. They had weapons and explosives hidden in dozens of locations across New Terra. "The aliens want to kill 200,000 humans to make a point," Jake told them. "They want to show us what happens when we stop following orders." "What can we do?" Amy asked. "We are just 50 people against the entire Galactic Council." Jake smiled. "We are going to show them what happens when they threaten human civilians. We are going to hit them so hard that they forget all about Haven." "How?" Pete asked. "We are going to take the alien embassy." The room went silent. The alien embassy was the most secure building on New Terra, protected by both human and alien. Security Forces. It housed representatives from all 12 major alien races and was considered neutral territory under galactic law. That is suicide, Carla said. No, Jake replied. That is war. And it is time the galaxy remembered what humans are capable of when they stop playing by alien rules. Jake began planning the attack that very night. He studied the embassy's defenses, the guard rotations, and the layout of the building. But more importantly, he planned what would happen after they took the embassy. This is not just about taking a building, he told his team. This is about sending a message to every human in the galaxy. It is time to stop asking permission and start taking what is ours. The attack was set for 3 days later during the embassy's monthly diplomatic reception, when all the alien representatives would be in one place. Jake spent those 3 days making final preparations and saying goodbye to Dr. Lisa Morgan, who had stayed on New Terra to study the implications of his discovery. You do not have to do this, Lisa told him. There might be another way. There is no other way, Jake replied. The aliens will never see humans as equals until we make them afraid to treat us as anything less. And if you fail? Jake looked out at the city lights of New Terra, where millions of humans lived under alien supervision. Then at least they will know that one human tried to set them free. The alien embassy stood in the center of New Terra, like a crystal tower reaching into the sky. It was built from materials that could survive a nuclear explosion and protected by energy shields that could stop any known weapon. Tonight, representatives from 12 alien races were inside for their monthly diplomatic reception. Jake Sullivan crouched in the shadows across the street with his team of 50 fighters. They wore dark clothes and carried weapons that could not be detected by alien scanners. Jake had spent 3 days studying every detail of the building's defenses. Remember the plan, Jake whispered into his communication device. We have 20 minutes to get in, secure the building, and send our message. After that, every military unit on the planet will be coming for us. Colonel Amy Price led the first team through the service tunnels that ran under the embassy. Sergeant Pete Rodriguez took his explosives team to the power station 3 blocks away. Carla Hughes positioned herself at the communications center to jam alien signals. Jake himself would enter through the front door dot at exactly midnight. Pete's team cut power to 6 city blocks. The embassy's emergency generators kicked in, but Jake knew they would only power the most critical systems. The building's heavy security doors switched to manual locks. Amy's team emerged from the tunnels in the embassy's basement. They moved quickly through the service areas, placing explosive charges at key structural points. The alien security guards were trained to watch for attacks from outside, not from within their own building. Jake walked up to the front entrance wearing a stolen diplomatic uniform. The human guards at the door recognized him immediately, but before they could react, Jake had disabled both of them with moves they never saw coming. He dragged their bodies inside and sealed the entrance behind him. Phase 1 complete, Amy reported through the radio. Basement secured. Phase 2 complete, Pete confirmed. Power grid is under our control. Jake moved through the embassy's main floor like a ghost. The building was designed to impress visitors with its size and luxury. But Jake only cared about finding the main reception hall where the alien diplomats were gathered. The reception hall was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed images of the galaxy's greatest civilizations. 12 alien ambassadors stood around elegant tables, discussing trade agreements and territorial disputes. They had no idea that their perfect security had just been broken by a handful of humans with primitive weapons. Jake entered the hall through the service door, moving so quietly that none of the aliens noticed him at first. When he was in the center of the room, he fired a single shot into the ceiling. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. Every alien in the room turned to stare at the human who had somehow appeared among them. Jake stood calmly, his weapon pointed at the floor, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Good evening," Jake said politely. "My name is Jake Sullivan, and I have something to tell you." Ambassador Zethka of the Zephyrian Empire was the first to recover from his shock. "Human, you have made a terrible mistake. This building is sovereign. Alien territory. Your presence here is an act of war." "No," Jake replied. "My presence here is a declaration of war." "There is a difference." Commander Vax of the Cortani clicked his mandibles nervously. "The human military does not have the capability to breach our security." "How did you accomplish this?" Jake smiled. "You have been studying the wrong humans, Commander. You know everything about modern human tactics, but you have never met a human from Earth's violent past." General Mock of the Vexon Collective stepped forward, his 4 arms moving toward his weapon. "One human cannot threaten 12 ambassadors. You will surrender immediately." "Actually," Jake said, "I can threaten you very easily. My team has placed explosive charges throughout this building. If I do not report to them every 5 minutes, they will detonate those charges and bring this entire embassy down on top of U.S. The aliens looked around the room with new understanding. They were trapped with a human who was willing to die to make his point. "What do you want?" Zefka asked. "I want you to listen," Jake said. "For the first time in 150 years, I want aliens to really listen to what a human has to say." Jake began to speak, and his words carried the weight of 400 years of human history. He told them about Earth's wars, about humans who fought against impossible odds and won. He described battles where humans had refused to surrender, even when facing total destruction. He explained how humans had climbed to the top of their planets. Food chain, not through superior technology, but through superior determination. "You think you know humans," Jake said. "You think we are a peaceful race that prefers diplomacy to violence. You are wrong. We prefer victory to defeat, and we will use any method necessary to achieve it." As Jake spoke, reports began coming in from across human space. His message was being broadcast on every human communication channel, and the response was immediate. On mining stations and farming colonies, humans who had spent their lives following alien rules began to question those rules. Military officers who had been trained to avoid conflict began to remember why they had become soldiers in the first place. Admiral Frank Powell received Jake's broadcast on his flagship orbiting the planet Centauri Prime. Powell had spent 30 years watching human forces become weaker while alien fleets grew stronger. He had followed orders and kept the peace, but now he faced a choice between his oath to the government and his duty to humanity. Powell gathered his senior officers in the ship's conference room. "You have all heard the broadcast. Jake Sullivan has declared war on the Galactic Council. He is one man with a handful of followers," said Captain Helen Ward. "He cannot possibly succeed." "Maybe not," Powell replied, "but he is asking the right questions. Why do humans need alien permission to build defensive weapons? Why do we limit our fleet size based on alien requirements? Why do we accept being treated as junior partners in our own galaxy?" While Powell debated with his officers, other human commanders across the galaxy were having similar conversations. The spark that Jake had lit was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Back in the embassy, Jake continued his speech. "You want to know what humans are really like? Let me tell you about the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 humans held off an army of thousands. Let me tell you about the siege of Stalingrad, where humans fought for every street and every building. Let me tell you about the Alamo, where humans chose death over surrender. Ancient history," General Mock growled. "Your species has evolved beyond such primitive behavior." "Have we?" Jake asked. "Or have we just been pretending to be civilized because you demanded it?" At that moment, Alarms began ringing throughout the embassy. The aliens' personal guards were trying to break into the building, but Jake's team had sealed all the entrances and disabled the security systems. "It seems your rescue is not going well," Jake observed. Through the embassy's windows, they could see human crowds gathering in the streets. Jake's broadcast had reached every home and workplace in the city. Thousands of humans were marching toward the embassy, demanding answers from their government about why they had to live under alien rules. "This is madness," Zethka said. "Even if you succeed here, the Galactic Council will respond with overwhelming force. Human colonies will be destroyed." "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But you will discover something about humans that you should have learned 150 years ago. We do not stay destroyed. We come back stronger, angrier, and more determined than before." Jake's radio crackled with a new message. "Jake, this is Admiral Powell. I am bringing the Third Fleet to New Terra. Whatever you have started, the human military is going to finish it." The alien ambassadors looked at each other with growing concern. One human with a small team was a terrorist. A human admiral with a fleet was the beginning of a war. Jake smiled as he heard Powell's message. "Gentlemen, I think our conversation is about to become much more interesting. You came here thinking you were dealing with one angry human. Now, you get to meet several thousand angry humans with warships." Outside the embassy, the crowd had grown to over 100,000 people. They chanted Jake's name and demanded that the human government stop bowing to alien demands. The revolution that Jake had started with 50 followers was becoming something much larger and more dangerous. "What do you want from us?" Commander Vax asked desperately. Jake's answer was simple. "I want you to be afraid. I want you to remember this night and tell your people that humans are not pets or servants or junior partners. We are predators who have been sleeping for 150 years. But now we are awake, and nothing you do will put us back to sleep." The Galactic Council's response was swift and terrible. Within 48 hours of Jake's embassy takeover, a combined alien fleet of over 500 warships gathered at the edge of human space. The Zephyrians brought their fastest ships, the Cortani their most advanced weapons, and the Vexon their largest battleships. They came to end the human rebellion before it could spread further. Admiral Frank Powell watched the alien fleet approach on his command screen. He had managed to gather 200 human ships at Proxima Gate, the main entry point to human space. His fleet looked small compared to the alien armada, but Jake had taught him that numbers were not everything in war. "Admiral," reported Captain Helen, "word from the bridge of the cruiser Defiance. The alien fleet is demanding our surrender. They say if we stand down now, they will only destroy our military ships and spare the colonies." Powell activated his fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Powell. Today we fight not just for our ships or our colonies, but for the right of humans to be free in the galaxy. Jake Sullivan showed us what we used to be. Now we show the aliens what we can become again." Jake himself was no longer at the embassy. After holding the alien ambassadors for 6 hours and broadcasting his message across human space, he had vanished into the underground tunnels of New Terra. The government building was surrounded by crowds demanding change, and President Nathan Cross had locked himself in his office, unsure what to do. But Jake was not hiding. He was preparing for the real battle. 3 months earlier, when Jake first learned about humanity's situation in the galaxy, he had begun planning for this moment. While training his followers in guerrilla tactics, he had also been studying the aliens' greatest weakness. They fought wars according to rules. They believed in honor and fair combat. They never expected their enemies to fight dirty. Jake had spent weeks placing agents throughout human space. Former soldiers, angry miners, and frustrated colonists had all received training in sabotage and terrorism. When the alien fleet attacked Proxima Gate, Jake's hidden army would strike targets across alien territory. The Battle of Proxima Gate began at dawn. The alien fleet advanced in perfect formation, their ships arranged according to centuries of military tradition. Admiral Powell ordered his ships to scatter and attack from multiple directions, using the asteroid field around Proxima to hide their movements. The first alien ship to die was a Zephyrian cruiser that thought it was chasing a damaged human transport. The transport led the alien ship into an asteroid field where Jake had hidden nuclear mines. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. "Impossible," said War Leader Grok, commanding the Vexon fleet. "Human ships do not carry nuclear weapons." "They do now," Powell replied over an open channel. "Jake Sullivan taught us to stop following your rules." The battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships rammed alien vessels, detonated themselves as bombs, and used tactics that no civilized race would consider. When the human cruiser Liberty was surrounded by 5 Cortani ships, its captain ordered his crew to abandon ship and then flew it directly into the alien flagship. But the aliens had superior numbers and technology. Despite their losses, they were winning. Powell's fleet was being destroyed ship by ship. The admiral himself was wounded when his bridge took a direct hit from a Zephyrian energy cannon dot. Then Jake's real plan began. Across alien space, explosions lit up the darkness. Space stations vital to alien commerce were destroyed by bombs that human workers had carried in their lunchboxes. Communication relays that connected alien worlds went silent as human janitors and maintenance workers revealed themselves to be saboteurs. Transport ships carrying alien civilians were hijacked by human crews who had spent years pretending to be loyal servants. On the Zephyrian homeworld, the great crystal spires that housed their government were brought down by explosives that had been placed during routine human construction work. On Cortani Prime, the computer networks that controlled their entire civilization were infected with viruses written by human programmers who had spent decades learning alien technology. The Vexon military bases found their weapons turning against them as human slaves who had been forced to work in alien armories revealed their true loyalty. Fighter pilots who had served alien masters for years suddenly turned their guns on their former commanders. "Report," demanded Supreme Commander Zorax, leader of the Galactic Council fleet. "What is happening to our homeworlds?" "Human uprisings on every major alien world," his aide reported. "Our slaves and workers were all spies. They have been planning this for months. That is impossible. Humans are not capable of such deception. Jake Sullivan is." Back at Proxima Gate, Admiral Powell received the reports from across alien space and smiled despite his wounds. "All ships, this is Powell. Jake's plan is working. The aliens are being attacked on every front. Now we finish what he started." The human fleet, reduced to less than 50 ships, made one final attack on the alien armada. But this time they were not alone. Human colonists throughout the system had armed themselves with mining equipment and transport ships. They came by the thousands, turning the space around Proxima Gate into a swirling mass of human vessels attacking anything with alien markings. The aliens had never faced anything like it. Their neat formations broke apart as human ships attacked. From every direction, civilian transports loaded with explosives rammed battleships. Mining vessels used their industrial equipment as weapons. Even human escape pods had been turned into guided missiles. Supreme Commander Zorax tried to retreat, but Jake had anticipated this. Human agents had sabotaged the jump gates that allowed faster-than-light travel. The alien fleet was trapped in human space, cut off from reinforcements, and facing an enemy that refused to fight by any rules they understood. "Surrender," Powell broadcast to the alien fleet. "Your homeworlds are burning and your fleets are defeated. Surrender now, and we will allow you to return home." "Never," Zorax replied. "The Galactic Council does not surrender to primitives." "Then you will all die here," Powell said simply. The final phase of the battle was not really a battle at all. It was a slaughter. Human ships swarmed over the remaining alien vessels like insects over dead meat. They showed no mercy and took no prisoners. By sunset, the space around Proxima Gate was filled with the wreckage of 500 alien warships. Jake Sullivan stood on the observation deck of a human space station, watching the alien fleet burn. Dr. Lisa Morgan found him there, still amazed by what he had accomplished. "You did it," she said. "You freed humanity." "No," Jake replied. "I reminded humanity how to free itself." Reports continued to come in from across the galaxy. On world after world, humans were rising up against their alien masters. The Galactic Council was in chaos as their homeworlds burned and their fleets were destroyed by enemies they had never taken seriously. But Jake knew the war was not over. It might never be over. The aliens would try to rebuild, to regain their power, to put humans back in their place. But something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. Humans were no longer willing to ask permission or follow rules made by others. "What happens now?" Lisa asked. Jake pointed to the stars beyond the battle wreckage. "Now humans go wherever they want and take whatever they need. The age of asking permission is over." As Jake spoke, human fleets were already moving toward alien territory. They carried weapons designed not for defense, but for conquest. They flew ships built not for exploration, but for war. And they were led by commanders who had learned from Jake Sullivan that sometimes the only way to gain respect was to make others afraid. The galaxy had spent 150 years trying to tame humanity. They had succeeded in making humans civilized, polite, and obedient. But they had forgotten that underneath civilization, humans were still the same species that had conquered Earth through violence and determination. Jake Sullivan had reminded them. And now nothing could stop what humans would become. The last message sent from the alien fleet was a desperate plea to any surviving Galactic Council forces. Do not engage human ships. Repeat, do not engage. They do not fight like any known species. They are willing to die to win. Consider all human space hostile territory. Jake smiled as he listened to the message. Fear was the beginning of respect, and respect was all he had ever wanted for his species. The ancient human had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same.